Hello, welcome back. This is Miniature Mike, and I want to make a quick fun video about Star Wars Miniatures Mandela effects. So I don't know about you, but when I used to play this game a long time ago, I just kind of assumed or thought certain things about characters or remembered certain abilities about characters, and then when I rediscovered the game, got back into it, I realized that a lot of characters either didn't or did have abilities that I thought that they did. It was really interesting because some of them were ones that were so ingrained that I swear I remember when I'd play the game, they had specific abilities like melee or not melee or some other power, and turns out they don't actually have it at all. So some of them are kind of minor, some of them are ones that I really quickly was like, oh yeah, I can see that, and some of them I didn't discover until after I'd rediscovered the game, back in like 2022. And then even a few years after that, I finally realized, oh, this character totally doesn't have the power I thought they had. So let's jump into it. I think I have about 11 of these. The last couple are the ones that were most surprising to me, and then we'll see where it goes. So number one Mandela effect for me was Darth Maul on Speeder. So I always thought that Darth Maul on Speeder had flight. Turns out he doesn't. I just assumed because he was a speeder. When I got back into the game, I looked through his card, and when I was doing some reviews, I realized, wait a second, this guy doesn't have flight. That's going to impact a little bit of kind of how he can use some of his powers. Luckily, it's probably not a huge deal because he can do some other stuff, like he has a lot of speed, but still it was really weird to me to realize, no, this guy doesn't have flight. So he's not the first one I thought this about. You'll see later on. Next is this is kind of a stand-in for all of the Dejark characters. I thought all the Dejark characters had Savage. Turns out only like 2 or 3 of them have Savage, most of them don't, which really surprised me. I didn't collect very many Masters of the Force growing up, and the one I did collect had Savage, and I just assumed they all did because they're, monsters, creatures, of course, really unique. And it turns out they don't. It's just a couple of them. So that was a surprising one for me when I got back into the game a couple years back to notice that they did not have that. Next one this was a really interesting one here. It's from KOTOR, so Massive. I always assumed that these guys had Savage for some reason. It's probably just the mini, it looks like it should have Savage. They just have melee, vicious attack, but for some reason in my mind, this wasn't a major one, but I always assumed that these guys from KOTOR had Savage, but they don't actually have Savage. So this one and the last one are the characters that I assumed had Savage, but they don't actually have it at all. This guy doesn't, which is, kind of fun, of course, because Savage can be a tricky thing to work around, but turns out I was wrong in this case. Number 4, and this one was actually, I knew about this a while ago, and then I forgot about it, and then when I got back into the game, I went like reset and forgot that he doesn't have melee attack, and then quickly was like, oh yeah, that's right, he can shoot. So Luke Skywalker, Hoth Pilot Unleashed, he doesn't actually, he's not holding a gun and a lightsaber. I always assumed that this character was just pilot, demolition charge, can do one attack with a lightsaber, melee attack, and then really the whole point of him is to use force push 100 times. No, this guy has melee. He does not have melee attack. He can shoot, and I did not know that. And to me, that makes him a lot more interesting. At least it's not like he has a great shot with 11 attack in terms of accuracy, but no, this guy, he's a Luke Skywalker, Hoth Pilot Unleashed. He can shoot. He does not have melee attack. And you'll see a lot of these ones are actually instances where I assumed someone had melee attack. Some cases for a really long time, and they don't actually have it. So this is an interesting one here, Darth Sidious Hologram. This was a surprising one when I got back into the game. Is the commander effect is allied characters within 6 squares gain force renewal. I assumed that just meant, of course, allied characters that had force ratings, of course, like Dark Jedi and any Sith Lords that don't have force renewal on their own. I was like, yep, they're the only ones that apply, of course. No, it turns out it's just allied characters within 6 squares gain force renewal, and that really blew my mind when I learned that it's actually, I was thinking about this, or I remembered this power wrong completely. That's really powerful. So I think this is kind of a surprising one. This is the only commander effect that I think kind of stood out to me that was different. Number 6, this one is one that I swear the Octopar droid had Wall Climber. He doesn't. And that's another one of the reasons why when I was doing some analysis on these characters, I have a video, either it's already come out or it'll come out soon, on the large base droids for Separatists. And I'd always assumed that this guy had Wall Climber. I think just like from the shows, from episodes of like Star Wars, I just kind of assumed that these things can crawl around buildings. But when I was a kid and I had one of these, in my brain, I read Wall Climber, Speed 8, triple attack. It doesn't have it at all. I wish it did. It would make it more fun, more mobile, but no. I always thought this guy had Wall Climber. Doesn't have it. Number 7. This is an interesting one that early on I swear had melee attack, so I always thought the crab droid. I don't really remember the huge crab droid, but definitely I remember the crab droid when I was younger had melee attack. I just assumed it was this, melee droid that you'd run up and rush people with momentum. And I think because it had momentum, I just immediately, in my mind, assumed it had melee attack as well. Turns out it doesn't. This one can shoot just like most of the other droids can. And momentum is great, and that's a power for, melee rushing, of course. But the crab droid doesn't have melee attack. I always assumed that it had melee attack growing up until I started rediscovering the game. But it turns out, again, I was wrong in this case. And this is another fun one. It's Luke Skywalker of Dagobah. There's a few reasons why I thought this. When I was younger and I was collecting, I swear this guy had melee attack. And the reason is he had unique, double, but then he had blaster barrage and lightsaber sweep. So I just assumed with the combination, oh yeah, you can attack everybody around you with sweep, or you could use a gun to shoot people around you instead with blaster barrage. Therefore, why have a blaster barrage and sweep at the same time? And so I just assumed this guy must be a melee character. If it was a melee, the 28 cost would be horrific. I mean, it's already kind of bad on this guy, on Luke Skywalker of Dagobah, but this is one that I always thought had melee attack until I think I realized this one before I stopped playing way back in 2011 that I realized, yeah, no, this guy doesn't have melee attack, he can shoot. But when I first started playing, 2006, 7, 8, I always just played or assumed that this one had it. Turns out it does not. So these next 3, number 9, 10, and 11, these are ones that I assumed that these are Mandela effects that I didn't realize until quite recently, especially the last one. The last one for sure I didn't even realize until even this year, which was kind of funny. So the third to last is Luke's land speeder. I always thought this thing had flight. And when I did my video on Luke Skywalker, this was actually quite a while. This is almost a year ago, maybe not quite a year. I think this is earlier this year in 2025. I assumed that this one had flight. When I was doing it, I realized, wait, this guy doesn't have flight. And I baked that into the amount of mobility this has, because this has speed 10, mobile attack, twin. That's really good stuff. I assumed it had flight when I was a kid. I collected this one. I pulled it from an Alliance and Empire pack, and I always played it like I had flight with my buddies. And I had no idea until recently that it did not actually have flight, which was kind of surprising. So moving on to this next one, this was a shocker for me. But my cousin I used to play with quite a bit back in 2003, early 2004. That cousin had all the Mandalorians except Mandalorian the Ultimate. Mandalore the Ultimate, but he had Mandalore the Indomitable. And when we grew up, I assumed for some reason, because he's holding like a scepter and a staff or whatever, and I think you can see that there's a gun on the back. But all my cousins, all of us, we always assumed and thought must have melee attack. I was like, oh, this kind of sucks. He's got momentum and double. He's not going to be able to run up to people and use momentum and double attack or whatever. So we always assumed until kind of recently that for some reason Mandalore the Indomitable had melee attack. That's not true. So when I played against my cousin, when I first started getting back into minis again, I think this was actually more 2022 time frame, he used the guy in a set and started shooting at me, and I was like, what are you talking about? Like, you can't do that. And he's like, no, there's no melee attack. This guy, he can shoot. He's just fine. And that blew my mind. I was like, what? This guy doesn't have this. I'm sure all of you, when you collected this, never even thought that. But for some reason, me and my cousins, we thought Mandalore the Indomitable was melee attack until quite recently, which is so funny. So anyway, this one's last but not least. This last one I'm going to show is a Mandela effect that I actually did not even realize I had wrong until maybe just a couple months ago, which is hilarious that it took that long. And that is let's see, come on, where is it? There we go. The Gino Haradan Assassin. This doesn't have melee attack, and my entire life when I was a kid growing up, I'd collect these. My cousins would collect these. We'd always, use cloak to get close to people and then attack them with with the poison blade. And that was the funny part, is everything on this card kind of made me think that it must have melee attack. And even then, when I did my tier list videos a while ago, going over KOTOR, I thought it's a fantastic character even if it had melee attack, because it has cloaked It has cunning and loner and poison blade and all that stuff. And then I was chatting with one of the members of the community, one of you guys, and you pointed out in one of the videos that did that no, this guy does not in fact have melee attack. He can shoot, and that was shocking. That was so funny to realize that, because I felt like after I'd spent a few years getting back in the game, familiarizing myself with the characters and the cards, I felt like I kind of worked out all those misconceptions, and it turns out that this one just slipped by until very recently, and I've always thought so. Don't know about you guys. That's my last one. Definitely, please comment below. I want to hear if in your whole history, your time playing this game, if there are any minis where they had powers that you thought they had, or you assumed they had a power, or maybe they didn't have something and you assumed that they had it. Definitely comment down below. I want to hear what you guys have to say. I want to hear what your Star Wars Miniatures Mandela effects are, if you had any. Maybe you just got the characters, everything caught on immediately and you didn't misconceive anything, but those are some of the ones that really shocked me when getting back in the game, and definitely the Gino Haradan Assassin. Literally up until 2 months ago, I always thought this had melee attack, so that was kind of a fun one. Anyway, please please subscribe. Like I said, comment down below on what your Mandela effects are in this game, and would love to hear what you have to say. Until next time, have a good one.